You have seen the writing on the wall. The undeniable signs of a fracturing financial machine are everywhere. A staggering $38 trillion national deficit that can never be settled, international allies actively shedding. American paper and the 2026 corporate debt cliff detonating right before our eyes. You are fully awake to the reality that we have entered the prologue of a devastating monetary meltdown capable of sparking global warfare. We know the real question keeping you awake at night is the cure. How does the everyday citizen, someone without a subterranean bunker in New Zealand or a labyrinth of shell companies, weather the impending storm? Staring into the abyss of economic ruin without a survival strategy breeds nothing but crippling anxiety and panic. Without a game plan is a death sentence. Over the course of this broadcast, I will hand you the exact blueprint required to shield your livelihood and your loved ones from the carnage accelerating today. January 23, 2026. We are not dealing in hypotheticals here. This is the precise methodology utilized by survivors throughout history whenever sovereign fiat evaporates and superpowers crumble. We will dissect the tangible wealth that endures catastrophe, specifically physical bullion and decentralized. Because in a rapidly deteriorating environment, being late is the same as being wrong. Before we dive into the mechanics, let me establish a firm boundary. I am acting as an observer of history, not your personal financial consultant. My objective is to lay out the historical rhythms, the flashing red alarms in today's markets, and the escape hatches successfully used by those who have outlived previous sovereign defaults. How you execute this intelligence is entirely on your shoulders. Speak to registered fiduciaries, scrutinize the data yourself, but whatever you do, do not sit on your hands. Freezing in place is the most toxic choice available. Our goal is not to mint new millionaires. Our mission is financial preservation, ensuring you do not plummet into poverty while the global monetary architecture undergoes a brutal paradigm shift. Think of this as a life vest for a sovereign bond market that is already taking on water and a fiat currency surrendering its global supremacy by the hour. The escape hatch is swinging shut, and we must move immediately. Let us ground ourselves in the terrifying mathematics of our current reality to understand why delay is fatal as we look at the board on January 23, 2026. The vital signs are plunging yields on the benchmark 10-year. Treasury have spiked to 479%, eclipsing anything we have witnessed since the eve of the great financial crisis. Climbing relentlessly, even as the central bank attempts to slash interest rates. That is the sound of global bond investors staging a mutiny, pricing in unstoppable inflation and default hazards that the authorities can know. Longer mask physical gold shattered the $4,620 threshold, this morning rocketing north of 30% in a mere 4 months. This is not retail frenzy. This is sovereign treasuries and institutional heavyweights abandoning toxic government paper. Silver has vaulted to $3,250 an ounce, a massive leap from the $23 mark just a half year ago. Meanwhile, aggressive regulatory crackdowns and hovering near historic ceilings. The great foreign exodus from American IOUs is accelerating into a full-blown rout. Beijing has slashed its holdings down to $680 billion, plumbing depths unseen since 2008, while Tokyo dumped another $6 billion just days ago, with Saudi Arabia following suit. The traditional buyers of American debt have vanished, yet the federal apparatus requires an injection of $2 trillion fresh dollars this calendar year simply to function. Who will absorb this oceanic wave of toxic debt? The sole remaining buyer of last resort is the Federal Reserve, initiating a mechanized tsunami of money creation that will cannibalize the purchasing power of every dollar sitting in your wallet. Furthermore, that catastrophic corporate debt cliff we have been tracking is arriving right now. In the first quarter of 2026 alone, a staggering $850 billion in commercial obligations comes due. Enterprises that feasted on nearly free money at 1 to 2% back in 2021 are now staring down the barrel of 5 to 6% refinancing rates. The math simply does not work for them. Insolvencies are skyrocketing. Jobless claims have surged from 220,000 weekly filings in December to 340,000 in the past 7 days, a blistering 50% explosion in 6 weeks. The layoffs are accelerating. Equities have plummeted 18% from their autumn 2025. Zenith bleeding the life out of retirement portfolios, and we are only in January. This is not a dark cloud on the distant horizon. The storm is overhead. The moment for preparation is not next month. The moment is today. The bedrock philosophy for surviving societal and economic unravelings is identical today as it was centuries ago. Acquire property that cannot be manifested out of thin air, holds inherent utility, and defends its value. When government decrees turn to dust, through every epoch of hyperinflation and every collapse of sovereign power, the lifeboats always look the same. Physical precious metals, tangible acreage, essential commodities, durable enterprises. And unique to our modern era, unseizable cryptographic ledgers. Let us begin with the eternal anchor gold. It boasts a 5-millennium, flawless track record, having navigated through the ruins of every fiat currency ever engineered by mankind. Trading at $4,620 this morning, the yellow metal has exploded from its $3,500 baseline in September 2025. Why this violent upward trajectory? It at unprecedented velocity. The year 2025 saw sovereign powers consume over 1,000 metric tons of bullion, marking the third straight year of such gluttonous accumulation. Gold is the solitary financial instrument that does not rely on another party's promise. It is immune to the printing press, impervious to debasement, and cannot be digitally frozen by hostile regimes. Owning the actual metal means possessing a slice of finite, universal wealth. Look at the raw performance metrics. At the dawn of the millennium, an ounce commanded roughly $280. Today it demands over $4,720, an appreciation exceeding 1,500%. Conversely, the fiat dollar has surrendered more than half of its real-world purchasing capability over that same span. Hoarding gold did not just freeze your wealth in amber. It exponentially expanded your economic footprint. However, a crucial misunderstanding plagues the retail public. Bullion is not an investment. It will not pay you a quarterly dividend or create revenue streams. It functions as a financial fire extinguisher. It is the asset of last resort when trust in the money printers evaporates. And here in early 2026, with Washington deficit spending $6 billion every 24 hours and the monetary authorities priming the pumps to rescue a staggering banking sector, holding faith in fiat is absolute insanity. Acquiring it correctly is paramount. You must demand tangible metal, not derivative promises. I cannot emphasize this enough. Hold the actual elemental weight in your palm. Reject the exchange-traded funds. Ignore the paper certificates and bypass the mining equities when the system seizes paper promises for metal. Routinely face suspension, aggressive taxation, or outright default. Back in 1933, executive overreach criminalized private gold ownership, forcing a massive surrender of wealth. Yet the state could not seize what it could not locate. True physical custody is paramount. What should you acquire? Focus exclusively on widely recognizable sovereign-struck coinage. The American eagle, the Canadian maple leaf, the South African Krugerrand, or the Austrian Philharmonic. These standard 1-ounce units enjoy global liquidity and absolute instant recognition. If your capital is limited, fractional increments are acceptable, though they carry steeper fabrication markups. History proves that during acute panics, premiums violently stretch to 15 or 20% as physical inventory vanishes. For safeguarding your hoard, diversification is your best friend, while bank-hosted safe deposit boxes seem secure. Banking holidays can sever your access instantly. A heavy bolted-down floor safe in a discreet residential capitulation could see $8,000 or more. Buy it to build a fortress, not to flip it for fiat. Next, we must evaluate silver, the more erratic, hyperactive sibling to gold, offering distinct tactical benefits for the everyday citizen. Trading currently at $3,250. It has enjoyed a fierce 41% climb from its $23 floor last summer. Silver swings with much more violence than gold, plummeting and skyrocketing with aggressive momentum. Yet it serves a dual mandate that makes it indispensable. It is both a historical ledger of wealth and a critical technological ingredient. The green energy revolution. Advanced medical tech and global electronics are consuming physical silver at an insatiable pace. Furthermore, the historical pricing ratio demands attention, currently sitting near 142 to 1, meaning it requires 142 ounces of silver to purchase a single ounce of gold. The white metal is historically severely underpriced compared to its historical average of 60 to 1. Should this historical equilibrium reassert itself, silver's trajectory is monumental. It also offers a much lower barrier to entry. A modest $500 investment procures a formidable stack of silver ounces, whereas it barely buys a sliver of gold. Focus your accumulation on sovereign 1-ounce coins like eagles and maples, or reputable privately struck rounds that guarantee 999% purity, larger 10-ounce or 100-ounce ingots. Reduce your premium footprint, but restrict your ability to liquidate in small increments. Pre-1965 American coinage, commonly known as junk silver, is heavily favored for survival bartering due to its recognizable fractional value. Anticipate steeper premiums here, generally running 15 to 25%. Over spot, driven by extreme fabrication bottlenecks. Storage requires logistical planning. 100 ounces of silver demands significantly more physical space than an equivalent weight of gold. Blending the two metals is the preferred tactic, perhaps. A 70-30 split favoring gold for raw wealth density, leaning heavier into silver if you are constructing your arc on a tighter budget. As industrial consumption devours mining output and retail anxiety surges, projections foresee silver breaching $45 to $50 by the finale of 2026, with an apocalyptic panic potentially driving it past $70. Landscape shifted seismically in early 2025 when the executive branch abandoned its hostile posture and established a strategic national Bitcoin stockpile, absorbing over 200,000 tokens valued deep in the billions to sit right next to gold reserves. This single maneuver vaporized the career risk of touching the asset. Wall Street followed suit with approved ETFs. Holding a digital ETF is not holding Bitcoin. Owning a Wall Street derivative means you merely possess a claim on a fund manager's ledger. During a severe liquidity event, those shares can be gated, halted, or seized. To truly capture the sovereign power of the network, you must execute self-custody. This means pulling your capital off regulated exchanges like Kraken, Gemini, or Coinbase immediately after purchase. Centralized trading platforms are honeypots for hackers and bureaucratic freezes. You must migrate those digital bearer instruments onto a dedicated offline hardware signing device like a cold card, Trezor, or Ledger. This grants you exclusive dominion over your cryptographic keys. The 12 to 24 word recovery phrase generated by these devices becomes your ultimate bearer instrument. Guard this sequence of words with your life. Cast it in steel, lock it in fireproof vaults, and duplicate it securely. If that phrase is lost, the wealth is immolated forever without recourse. Because of its intense volatility profile, a prudent crisis allocation hovers around 5 to 10% of your portfolio, reserving larger 20% stakes only for those with iron stomachs. Never allocate capital you rely on for immediate survival. Yet as trust in the dollar completely evaporates and the printing presses spin up to terminal velocity, Bitcoin's strictly capped supply makes it a devastatingly effective inflation shield. Conservative models suggest a push toward $150,000 this year, with aggressive scenarios painting a path past $200,000 if the fiat dam entirely bursts. It is a vital component of a resilient posture. Synthesizing these elements into an optimal defense matrix looks something like this. Anchor your wealth with 40 to 50% in physical gold for its unassailable track record. Deploy 20 to 30% into physical silver for upside leverage and granular transaction capability. Allocate 10 to 20% into self-custodied Bitcoin for highly mobile, seizure-resistant digital density. Finally, maintain 10 to 20% in standard fiat cash to navigate immediate daily friction, but never as a long-term storage vehicle, just as vital as your acquisition. Strategy is avoiding the catastrophic blunders that slaughter the unprepared. The most common trap is attempting to perfectly time the market, waiting for a magical pullback to $4,000 gold that will never materialize. In an escalating crisis, normal market gravity is suspended. Step in and start accumulating now. The second fatal error is settling for paper derivatives instead of demanding physical delivery. If it is not in your hand, it is not your wealth. The third is a failure of operational security, leaving assets vulnerable to physical theft or failing to properly back up digital seed phrases. Fourth is running your mouth, broadcasting your bullion stack on the internet or mentioning your crypto holdings at neighborhood gatherings paints a massive target on your back. When societal desperation peaks, stealth is your greatest armor. Fifth is dangerous concentration. Diversifying across different classes of hard assets mitigates blind spots. Sixth is hyperfixating on financial instruments while ignoring biological realities. You cannot eat silver coins. A robust pantry water filtration, medical provisions, and hardened community alliances must precede any financial maneuvering. Lastly, the ultimate mistake is absolute paralysis. Becoming so overwhelmed by the data that you freeze guarantees your destruction. You do not need a flawless master plan today. You just need to acquire a single ounce of silver or execute a minor Bitcoin transfer to break the inertia. Understanding the velocity of this collapse is critical for your planning. Here is the unvarnished trajectory based on hard metrics. We are currently navigating the first quarter of 2026, the preliminary tremor phase. Yield curves are violently dislocated, mass layoffs are metastasizing, and institutional bankruptcies are breaking records. Securing your lifelines now puts you miles ahead of the herd as we cross into the second quarter. Between April and June, that maturity wall will detonate, triggering a cascade of commercial defaults and severe banking fractures. This is the exact window where the central bank is mathematically forced to capitulate and flood the zone with fresh liquidity. That specific catalyst will send the masses stampeding into hard assets, causing gold, silver, and digital ledgers to completely detach from legacy pricing, moving into the late summer and early autumn of Q3. If the systemic rot deepens, we will face catastrophic dollar depreciation. The official inflation metrics will easily breach double digits, while your actual reality surges past 20%. Factor in a high-probability geopolitical flashpoint in the Pacific theater, and the physical supply of precious metals will completely evaporate from retail channels. Markups will reach extortionate levels, and trying to secure bullion in this phase will be functionally impossible. By the twilight of 2026, the landscape becomes entirely unpredictable, ranging from a draconian rollout of programmable central bank digital currencies to outright global conflict. Hoping for a miraculous stabilization when the mathematical realities dictate terminal decline is a fool's errand. Your window of opportunity is not expanding. It is slamming shut right now in this first quarter. Many wonder about the viability of traditional real estate, while undeniably tangible property carries massive liabilities during a systemic unwinding. It is heavily illiquid, making rapid capital extraction impossible. It demands relentless capital for maintenance, insurance, and property levies. Most dangerously bankrupt municipalities will inevitably weaponize property taxes to plug their deficits, essentially confiscating your wealth slowly. But do not mistake it for a mobile dynamic wealth preserver. Equities are similarly perilous. Broad market indexes are priced in a dying currency, and reflect a collapsing consumer base. However, specialized sectors, such as deeply entrenched energy producers, essential agricultural conglomerates, or precious metal extractors may survive the culling if your capital is trapped inside restrictive retirement vehicles. Aggressively pivoting away from bloated tech valuations and into robust commodities, or defensive utilities, is your best tactical retreat. Do not seek refuge in foreign fiat. Either the Eurozone is drowning in its own sovereign obligations. The Japanese debt-to-GDP ratio is apocalyptic. Trading one sinking paper promise for another is pointless. First, conduct a ruthless audit of your exposure. Calculate your ratio of hyperliquid fiat against tangible, indestructible assets. If you sit at absolute zero, you are in the kill zone. Second, establish your defensive parameters. Commit to a specific percentage, perhaps 15%, to start to migrate into physical and digital safety. Third, establish your logistical pipelines immediately. Initiate the verification processes for reputable cryptocurrency exchanges and open dialogue with established bullion purveyors. Fourth, pull the trigger. Do not overthink the entry price exchange. $32 for a single silver round if necessary. But take the physical action to shatter your psychological gridlock. Fifth, lock it down the moment you take delivery of metal or digital assets. Move them instantly into hardened private custody. Sixth, enforce absolute silence about your preparations. Finally, view this broadcast from The Economic of Fallen Empires as merely your introductory briefing. Devour historical accounts of the Weimar Republic's hyperinflation, Zimbabwe's currency destruction, and the ongoing tragedy in Venezuela. The past is a mirror reflecting our immediate future. Let us destroy the lingering excuses. Bullion is too rich for my blood at $4600. Then purchase fractional weights. Pivot heavily into affordable silver, or acquire $100 fractions of Bitcoin. They will just outlaw it again. Highly improbable in a modern non-gold standard environment, and effectively impossible to enforce. Against quiet, undocumented physical hoarding, cryptocurrency might crater to zero. That is precisely why you implement diversification, though rapid institutional and sovereign. Absorption makes total annihilation incredibly unlikely today. I might need my cash immediately. Precious metals are universally recognized and highly liquid. Any reputable dealer will exchange standard coinage for fiat on the spot. The tech is too confusing. You do not need a computer science degree to utilize a hardware wallet. A few hours of dedicated study is the only barrier standing between you and absolute financial sovereignty. Should I kill my mortgage first? Eliminate predatory high-interest consumer debt instantly. However, retaining a fixed low-interest mortgage during hyperinflation is actually a massive advantage, as you will service that debt with increasingly worthless dollars while your hard assets inflate in value. My capital is locked in a 401k. Investigate self-directed options, rotate into commodity-backed funds, or consult a tax specialist about absorbing the early withdrawal penalty to physically liberate your wealth. Here is the brutal truth of human nature. The vast majority of individuals consuming this intelligence will nod in solemn agreement, feel a fleeting sense of urgency, and then return to their digital distractions without altering a single variable in their lives. The gravity of normalcy bias is incredibly powerful. Taking decisive action means acknowledging the terrifying reality that the societal safety nets are snapping. It demands the labor of research, the friction of opening new financial conduits, and the courage to step away from the herd. But passive hope is a guaranteed failure. The minority who successfully navigate sovereign defaults and emerge on the other side with their prosperity intact are those who maneuver early, absorbing the ridicule of the masses. They are the individuals mocked for exchanging $4,600 for a yellow rock today, only to preserve their entire standard of living when that same rock commands $12,000 half a decade later. They are the ones stacking silver tubes at 30. They are the forward thinkers who master cold storage now, ensuring they can seamlessly transact when the commercial banks arbitrarily freeze accounts. That precise window of opportunity is unlatching today, but the hinges are already swinging shut. When the commercial banking sector fractures in Q2 and the Federal Reserve hits the panic button with endless liquidity, the global rush into finite assets will be terrifying. You will be fighting millions of panicked citizens for non-existent inventory paying astronomical premiums. Executing this strategy today is playing on easy mode. Waiting until tomorrow is inviting devastation. I have spent the last half hour laying out the architecture of survival. But theoretical knowledge absent physical execution is entirely useless. You must make a conscious choice this very second to take one tangible step. Procure a single silver coin, register for a digital asset exchange, and secure $200 in Bitcoin. Identify a reputable bullion dealer and acquire a fractional gold piece. A single physical action shatters the inertia. Next week, you take a second step. And before the month concludes, you will have constructed a fortress capable of weathering the collapse of the dollar hegemony. The 2026 economic fracture is no longer a fringe prophecy. It is the headline news. The treasury markets are bleeding out foreign. Capital is fleeing, the debt cliff is here, and the printing presses are warming up. Those who position themselves will thrive. Those who trusted the establishment will be completely erased. The choice of which camp you belong to is entirely yours. If this blueprint from the economic of fallen empires provided you with clarity, ensure you are subscribed and actively monitoring this channel. Our upcoming broadcast will dissect advanced survival mechanics, navigating a localized barter economy, maintaining extreme operational security during periods of peak desperation, and positioning your wealth for the world that follows the monetary reset. You cannot afford to miss it. Act today, fortify your perimeter. We are no longer preparing for a hypothetical storm. We are standing in the pouring rain. The only unknown is whether you bothered to build a roof. Stay vigilant, stay hardened, and do not delay.